pretty fortunate to be in this plane to actually serve you guys. Y'all know what my office is, I think. You know my phone number, I hope. If not, I might have a card or two in my van somewhere. It's still up on Wheelwood. Oh, I'm in the book. The reason I tell everybody to want to know how to get a hold of me is stop in the bathroom on I-5 because I think we can find my business card. I guess folks, right now I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce you to my boss, Jon Lopey, Army, Reserve, retired. And I have to tell you, he's made a lot of good strides to help the veteran service office move forward. So, with that, thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me to this great event. And I can tell there's a lot of great veterans and their families here. And some of you look pretty tough. I think you still grab an M1, an M14, or an M16 and wreak havoc on the internet. I guarantee you that. So, and first of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that November 10th is a monumental day. It was the birthday of the United States Marine Corps, 236 years. So all you happy birthday. I still have those Marines, even though coincidentally this week was 39 years ago, Tuesday, that I graduated from Marine Corps basic training. Wow. And I still have tremors and I still get fear and trepidation whenever I think about the drill instructors because usually I can't remember what happened yesterday, but I remember boot camp like it was like and I remember those those of us who were in the Corps, it was pretty tough going. I remember the first night I showed up, I was just it was on my 18th birthday. And I showed up at MCRD San Diego, and I remember the first question was, "Are you eyeball me, boy?" And I thought to myself, well, if you say yes, then you get smacked because you're breaking the position of attention. If you say no, you get smacked because you said you're lying. So, and then the other question we got that perplexed me was, do you love me? Well, of course I don't. But if you said yes, he'd accuse you of espousing an alternate lifestyle. If you said no, again, he's going to smack you because you're lying. I mean, you couldn't come up with the right answer. But anyway, thank you for being here. And we were talking over here with these great veterans, and we were talking, cities or towns like Happy Camp, they produce the best soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, that are in existence. Because, one neat thing about, the military, it's integrated. You get every type of individual in boot camp. Toughest guy like my boot camp, I remember his name was Johnny Littlefunder. He's a Native American from the Midwest, the toughest guy in our boot camp class. And we had people from Kentucky, we had people from, we only have, here we are in California, MCRD San Diego, we only have 6 people from California. They're all from Chicago or Kentucky or Texas or Utah, places like that. But, it was, I served, I first went in the military during the Vietnam era in the Marine Corps. And then I got out, went to school in the GI Bill, and then I went to Marine OCS, and then I ended up in the National Guard, had to go to Officer Candidate School at Fort Benning. And I had the privilege of serving as an officer, but what I'm proud of is I started out as a private, a lowly private. And I served about 38 years active reserve. And the greatest privilege I had in my life was serving with the great men and women in the military. Because even though our country, sometimes I think our country's not heading in the right direction. But when I served in places like the Philippines, Haiti, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq, those are the best men and women, this country's ever produced. And you know what? You're the best men and women the country's ever produced. And even if you weren't in the military, if you're a family member of a military person, you put up with more guff than we do. So you're all heroes.
Thank you.
You know, I prepared a speech. I hope you don't mind. I didn't, I'll read it and try not to be too boring. But I just want to thank you. It's an honor to be here with you this evening. And again, you know, you men and women represent the very best our nation has to offer. And this happy campus is a great area. And it is amazing that so many veterans will come here and not only honor your fellow veterans, but also honor your community in this country. And you're still loyal and you're still proud. And you know what, one nice thing about the military I like is when I was overseas, you know what? I used to get in that, they had this MRAPs now. I remember when I started out, we had Jeeps. We didn't have too much armor. Now they have these mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles with the V-shaped hulls. Well, they're supposed to protect you from these improvised explosive devices. And every time I got in that rig, because I was a senior officer, and I used to go outside the wire a lot, especially in Afghanistan, you know who I had to rely on for my life? Some 18 or 19-year-old driver, an 18 or 19-year-old truck commander, and some 20-year-old, PFC or specialist with bayonet machine gun. And oh, by the way, there are men and women manning the machine gun. And some of the women were the best shots. And I used to look at these men and women, these kids, with amazement. And here I'm an old dude, I'm in my late 50s, and have been in the military a long time. Well, you know what? We got a new greatest generation rising up in our country right now. And I have a nephew that just arrived in Afghanistan for a second 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had another nephew that was in Iraq when I was there. He was an infantryman in a striker unit. But those kids are doing an outstanding job for this country. Just a great job. And you look at these kids and you go, where'd these kids come from? Because you hear all this, these complaints about the kids these days. They're selfish, they're self-indulgent, they don't want to work. I'll tell you what, these kids are doing such a great job. And they're fighting for our freedom. And we got these kids coming home. And I just hope that when they come home, we show them the admiration and respect that they deserve. And I'll tell you another difference between when I was in during the Vietnam era and the nation now. During the Vietnam era, some of us wore our uniforms home. Well, I was actually living in the Bay Area. My mother worked at Travis Air Force Base. One time, Jane Fonda was out in front of the main gate of Travis Air Force Base lodging a protest against the war. Oh. We got on buses that had metal screens were unmarked to ship us off to San Francisco so we could board the plane. Sometimes we boarded the plane in Travis, but a couple times we had to go to San Francisco to catch one of those flying tiger flights. And, you couldn't even wear your uniform without someone making a snide comment, especially in the Bay Area for some reason. And it's ironic that my dad and my uncle fought in World War II. Guess where they're from? The Bay Area. And I just lost my last uncle about 7 months ago. My last uncle died. And he was a Navy gunner on a ship that got hit by a kamikaze plane at the Battle of Lake Gulf. And it's ironic that these great warriors came from the Bay Area, just a generation later, those of us who served during the Vietnam era, we sometimes couldn't, it wasn't even safe to wear your uniform in an airport. Well, now, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, and people say, well, why do you say Coast Guard? When I was in Iraq, they had Coast Guardsmen down in Qasr, the port. We got all the services represented. And it was just, and I'll tell you what, I was shocked. I came home on R&R from Afghanistan. We landed in the Dallas airport. And I was thinking, man, airport, I don't know how this is going to go. We walked through the airport, people started clapping. We got to the end of this corridor, and there's a line of people. There's like 300 people there, the troops. Patting them on the back. We had they called her the Huggy Grandma. She said, I'm going to hug every service man or woman that comes through this airport. I said, well, okay, I'm for that. But that is the difference between that Vietnam era and now. And you know what? That's because of great patriots like you who support our military and support the war effort. The thing is we all know the great thing about the military is if you have a strong military, then these knuckleheads in the world like that Ahmadinejad in Iran, he's going to be afraid to mess with us. And those of you who served during the Cold War, hey, we won the Cold War. And why is that? Because we had a strong military. Stay on that thin line between tyranny and slavery and freedom. That's why we won. That's why the Soviets backed down. The Soviets thought they could go to Afghanistan and push those people around in Afghanistan. And the Mujahideen kind of picked their rear end. Of course, we helped, providing Stinger missiles and some of those others. But that's the difference between now and today. And I always thought it's such a privilege serving in the military. First of all, the miracle that I even survived so long, the miracle that I achieved the rank I did, starting out as a private. But in the military, duty, honor, commitment, and courage, those words that are so important that built this country and made it what it is, those words mean something to the kids in the military. And to you, all of you. And all of you exemplified those words. And they weren't just hollow, they meant something. And that's why this country is great. And that's why you'll help to maintain what we've earned up to this point in time in this nation. So, anyway, sorry, I kind of went off on a and I'll try to paraphrase some of this stuff I wrote. But your presence means so much on this great occasion because your presence as a veteran, friend, or family member pays tribute to those who served or have served this great nation, the active Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, or active or inactive reserves or National Guard. And let me mention, we all know this. I'm kind of preaching the choir here. I really am. I know that. But you know what? Freedom isn't free. And what we have in this great nation is due to those who have been willing to serve in our military during peacetime or war. A great Marine, believe it or not, a chaplain said these words, "It is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of the press. It is the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the organizer, who has given us the freedom to demonstrate. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows the protester to burn the flag." It is the men and women like you in this audience who have given us what we have. Despite the efforts of the finest military in the history of mankind, we live in very dangerous times. Currently, we have about 70,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan, and we have about 30,000 or so in Iraq. Supposedly, we're pulling out of Iraq by the end of the year. And we have thousands of others. We have something like, I think we have like 400,000 troops serving in various countries, 150 nations in the world. Oh, by the way, there's been 42 million veterans who have served in time of war since the nation's inception in 1776. And almost over a million have died. And those of you, I went to an event this morning. We had a World War II veteran who was on the USS Indiana. What a hero. He was wounded at Siskiyou. He's only one of 14 crew members still alive. And that greatest generation really set the example for all of us to try to emulate. Because they did it. They got it done. They did it pretty fast, too. Because they didn't have all that technology they have now. But since then, men and women have stepped up and done the job that had to be done. And I think that our military and their families have sacrificed in this current war for 10 years. And what's amazed me is the great citizens, the United States of America honors those soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, like I was telling you. And they're not backtracking like they did in Vietnam and turned their backs on the military when they fought just as bravely as any other generation. And I was proud to join the Marine Corps, even though, I was from the Bay Area. Well, I wasn't originally from the Bay Area. I moved there when I was 13 from Nevada. And a lot of people, they wanted to sit around and smoke dope, and they didn't want to, get involved. And the Vietnam War wasn't popular. Hey, my dad served in World War II in Korea. I was proud to serve in the military. And we got to remember, those Vietnam vets, a lot of the reason that we have such success today in the military is because of guys like Petraeus and Odierno, General Odierno I worked for, and Schwarzkopf, a lot of these generals grew up during that Vietnam era. They made sure that our troops were treated a lot better in future wars and conflicts than they were during the Vietnam era. And that's one of the reasons that we're kicking rear ends and taking names. Because we're not going to settle for that again. Thousands of our brave men and women have been awarded medals for valor in this current war against global terrorism. Do you hear much of it in the news? The news media is asleep at the switch. Most of it. During World War II, if you got the Congressional Medal of Honor, if you award the Congressional Medal of Honor or the Distinguished Service Cross or Navy Cross or Silver Star or Bronze Stars, you're front page news. And now we only have, in 10 years, we only have 3 living recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor from the global war on terrorism, because the rest of them were posthumously awarded. Only 3. And someone asked, we were talking about that. And Staff Sergeant Winta from the 173rd Airborne, Sergeant First Class Petrie from the Rangers, Army Rangers, and now Sergeant Cody Myers from the Marines, only living recipients. And the reason I mention their names is because their names ought to be remembered for their heroism. And all the other hundreds of thousands of other men and women who have fought bravely. The media might forget, but we won't, and I know you won't. And that makes all the difference in the world to these veterans. When someone pats them on the back and just say, thank you. Just what I'm doing is thank you for what you've done for this great nation. Because we wouldn't be diddly if it wasn't for you. And we owe so much to our veterans and their families. Did you know that about 1,500 veterans die every day? 1,200 of them are World War II veterans. A friend called me the other day. His Uncle Herbie. I met Uncle Herbie a few years back at his retirement. Uncle Herbie, a Marine from World War II, Iwo Jima, Battle of Iwo Jima. He was there about 2 or 3 weeks. He was wounded and had to be evacuated from the battlefield. Uncle Herb passed away this week. So if we know, you know a veteran, you got to thank him, you got to appreciate him now, because they're not going to last forever. We got 1,500 of them dying every day. The national treasure is fading away. We've got to recognize them. Currently, there are about 21.9 million living veterans in the U.S. 3.3 million of our veterans live with service-connected disabilities. 5.5 million total veterans live with disabilities overall. There are currently 9 million veterans living that are 65 or older. And over 2 million veterans are still alive from World War II. 2.7 million survived from the Korean War and 5.6 million from peacetime service. Nearly 34% of our veterans in the war against terrorism will suffer from some degree of post-traumatic stress disorder, and many have suffered from other injuries such as traumatic brain disorder or injury. There are over 7.6 million Vietnam-era veterans still alive, and they comprise 35% of living veterans. Did you know that 390 Vietnam veterans are dying every day, and less than 805,000 Vietnam veterans still survive who are actually on the ground fighting in Vietnam? So even the great Vietnam veterans are fading away. Martin Luther King once said, if a man hasn't discovered something that he will die for, he isn't fit to live. In Vietnam, 58,200 men and women were killed and 304,000 wounded. That's about 10% of the force. 75,000 were severely disabled. 5,283 Vietnam veterans lost limbs, and 1,081 suffered multiple amputations. Of those killed in Vietnam, 61% were less than 21 years old. 11,465 killed were less than 20, and 5 men killed were 16 years old. Obviously, I lied about the race. Despite these sobering casualty figures and incredible hardships, like their World War II counterparts, 85% of Vietnam vets successfully transitioned to civilian life. 91% of Vietnam veterans say they are glad they served, and 87% of the American people hold Vietnam veterans in high esteem. Finally, they got the message. It took a while, but finally they got the message. Truly, the gallant men and women of the global war on terrorism and veterans of all wars are representative of the true value of our armed forces and the valor our servicemen and women have exhibited on battlefields or training grounds since the beginning of our nation. Veterans exemplify the duty, honor, and service which makes the United States of America special. And those of us who've been in some of these other countries in the world, you know, one thing about going overseas, it sure is fun coming back. Because living in Afghanistan is like paradise, especially if you've been in places like Haiti, Afghanistan, Iraq, and you know, I like the Philippines, but I'll tell you what, nothing, no country is ever compared to the United States of America. There are places I live, you could never drink the water. You had to close the eyes when you shower because you get sick if the water got in your eyes. I lived in places without electricity. I lived in places like Haiti where the average kid has one meal a day if he or she is lucky. And the average person makes like $250 a year. And I'm thinking, you know what? Our veterans have built the greatest nation this world has ever seen. I think God gave us the greatest nation ever seen.
Amen.
And as long as we remember that, we've got hope with the help of our veterans. Veterans exemplify, again, the duty, honor, and service which makes our country great. Calvin Coolidge once said, the nation which forgets its defenders will be itself forgotten. We have the opportunity to reflect on our military veterans and the price they and their families have paid for our freedom and the hardships we have avoided because of their courage, commitment, sacrifice, and eternal vigilance. 42 million men and women have served in the armed forces, and over 1 million have been killed in our conflicts. I'd like to think that these men and women and those of you who have served have done something very special for our nation and the oppressed all over the world. America has served as a shining light in an often dark world. It has been a force for good, a force for peace, and a force for positive change. Senator Robert F. Kennedy once said, it is from numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped, and each time a person stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope. That ripple builds others. Those ripples crossing each other from its million different centers of energy build a current that cannot sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and injustice. What is the debt to our servicemen and women, especially those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for freedom, overseas and stateside? I have continuously witnessed the intelligence, courage, determination, skill, loyalty, and unwavering commitment and heroism of our fine servicemen and women time and time again. Supporting our troops and their families is a debt we owe them, and to all of you, that's what we owe you. Marine Corps General veteran, the recipient of the Navy Cross and Medal of Honor, he was at the Chosun Reservoir in Korea, said, "We have come to more fully appreciate the one common golden thread which runs through all our war experiences. Their gallantry in combat, their compassion for the victims of war, their support of families and communities at home, and their constant patriotism and loyalty, they, veterans, are a major force for good in the United States of America. You and they are national treasures of our nation. To me, the heroes are not the rock stars or the athletes. I love sports. You're the heroes that I honor." That's the way I feel. Theodore Roosevelt once said, "A man who is good enough to shed his blood for his country is good enough to be given a square deal afterwards." Indeed, our veterans deserve a square deal, and all the honor, respect, admiration, gratitude, and homage we can bestow upon them and their families. We owe a debt to all veterans. They have honored the United States of America, our flag, and the Constitution by serving. All of you have done that. You have fought and died to keep us free. Their sacrifices make this country and this world safer and a better place. They set a selfless example of service, patriotism, and valor for all to follow. And you don't just serve in the military, you serve your communities, because you're proving that by being here today, supporting one another. You always have been brave when others have faltered. You notice that even during the Vietnam era? You didn't go to Canada, or you didn't go grab a sign and try to burn the American flag. You served. You stood up when others would not. When I might add, the majority did not. Veterans helped ignite and renew the beacon of light for the lost and oppressed. Veterans shoulder the burden of physical, mental, and emotional wounds of combat. Veterans have always been and continue to be the glue which binds our nation's foundation. Veterans show us all what integrity, duty, honor, strength, fidelity, valor, and what the definition of a celebrity or a hero should be. Veterans and their families are the very best our nation has to offer. Let us now, above all other endeavors, value and honor the sacrifices of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, active, reserve, and National Guard, for all they have done for so many, here and abroad. Let us now remember the cost paid by others to make us free. And that's another thing. When I was overseas, I noticed I was Army Reserve. You know, in Iraq and Afghanistan, roughly half the force is National Guard and Reserve. I saw this big truck in Iraq, in Baghdad, and it said, excuse my language, but this is what it said. It said, a weekend, a month, and 2 weeks during the summer, my ass. That was in Baghdad on this big truck. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, when you're in the Guard and Reserve, you kind of got to step up and get it done, Plato, the great philosopher, once said, only the dead will see the end of war. What's that mean? That means that as long as we have a strong military, obviously, we're going to be less susceptible to get in these foreign entanglements. But we never learned the lesson. What happened after World War II? You know, the Army had 89 divisions. We had like 12 million men and women serving under arms in World War II. By 1950, we almost got pushed off the Pusan perimeter in the Korean War. We had 10 understrength divisions. 10 when we had 89. How many combat-ready units did we have during the Korean War? We had 1 combat-ready division in the Army in 1950 because of budget cuts. And they wouldn't deploy that unit. It was the 82nd Airborne because they were a fire brigade because they thought we might have problems with Russians in Europe. So the average unit that landed in Korea was 63% strength. pounders, you know that means you usually have two up, like 2 battalions up, 1 battalion back in reserve. Well, in those days, they had 2 battalions up and maybe a platoon in the rear for reserve. So our men, a lot of men got killed because we weren't ready. Just like what happened in Pearl Harbor, and Bataan, and some of those other areas. So we've got to remember that the military must be strong to deter this aggression. But the lessons of history dictate that Plato is probably right that, hey, wars are going to continue. And I can tell you, these terrorists, I got to admit, I was kind of a higher-ranking officer, and I didn't get shot at a lot. But I got shot at by terrorists in Afghanistan. And these people are bad people. And, when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, 70% of the people that were killed were not military. They're innocent men, women, and children. So that's what we're fighting for. An enemy that wants to see the end of the United States of America and the end of all of us. I thank God we have always had a military that has kept us safe and veterans who have provided the heart, soul, muscle, and sinew which has always made our nation great. Ronald Reagan once said, above all, we must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. The moral courage of the free men and women of our military, our veterans in our military and their families stand on that line between war and peace and protection versus destruction. You, our veterans, have always stood for honor, duty, country, and service. As long as we have a military and our veterans to light the path in this world, there will always be freedom, security, hope, and justice. And that's just pretty much it. I want to thank you for the honor of allowing me to be with you tonight and sharing this meal and to speak a few words. And again, I salute you for being veterans, supporters of veterans, or family members of veterans. And God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.